Welcome back to Kansas City. My name is still Tom Stein Jr., and we are covering the history of small group level funding here in America. And right now we are in video number 3, or if you speak French, good for you. This is the third video that we're doing, a little bit of a look back here as we move forward. We're going to go back and do this really quickly since a lot of you guys have already seen the first 2 videos. We covered how we went from chickens for care, so to speak, forward through the Wage and Price Control Act of FDR, how that established more or less the system that has become so Byzantine, HMOs, and how we arrived here at PPOs. PPOs are what we're going to cover today, and a little bit of thing called an EPO, but a couple of things that we need to make sure that we understand as we're evaluating our industry. There's a lot of people who will, cast shade at our industry, rightfully so in some situations and wrongfully so in others. But a couple of things that I think we need to consider and keep in mind as we think through these solutions. One, every action has a reaction, right? The market responds. So any changes that you make inside of it by one player or one actor inside of the market are going to affect other actors inside of the market, right? Complex adaptive systems, if you will, if you want to get kind of nerdy. If you change one component, it changes a lot of other things. It just takes time to shake through the entire marketplace, so to speak. Now, with that in mind, there are no perfect solutions. There are only trade-offs. The American system, as we currently have it, has engaged in trade-offs like every other system. And the trade-offs to the American system has been the greatest R&D model in the history of humanity. Most new treatments and cures come out of our marketplace, not out of the other 96% of the planet. So it's something that we have to keep in mind. I would encourage you to think about this and think this through, and we'll do the follow-up at the end of the video. Is it more ethical, or is it better to live in a society in which a parent cannot afford a treatment for their child? Or is it more ethical to live in a society where the treatment for that child does not exist? Now, we're going to put that in the back of your mind because that's really what we're talking about when we talk about our regulatory structure inside of American healthcare. That is the fundamental question as far as I can drill down to for my limited mental capacity. We are going to roll forward to PPOs. PPOs were an organization that came out of, remember we talked about HMOs and indemnity. It came out of those two sides of the marketplace, right? Indemnity came out as very high trust. Think of the gruff men coming back, think of your grandfather's type of deal. Coming back from the war, they do business with people they trust, and they trust the people they do business with. If you're not a high trust individual, they won't work with you, right? It has its problems, it's very localized, but it has its beautiful parts to it, which is that the bad actors are cast out. Like most systems, complex and adaptive, that one was bought up by the Wall Street types, as I like to call them. The next was the HMO, which sought to solve that from the doctor's perspective or from the facility and provider's perspective. The trust between the producer, the consumer, and the payer starts to erode. We have that same third-party payer problem that's existing throughout our entire marketplace. As those two have eroded, we arrive at a thing called PPO, right? That's where we're here today. The PPO is a system in which you have preferred providers. It started off as, in a modern term, more of an EPO, right? Very small, state-based, county-based plays where they'll have a certain group of facilities or providers that come in and they agree they're going to take steerage and they'll accept lower amounts of money and they'll be honest with each other as they do that. One second. That's ATA coffee. I think it's pretty darn good coffee. We get a second sip.
Technical question. Do you want to leave that in right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like it. It's humanity, right? Anyway, really good coffee from ATA. I'm a big fan. Drink it every day. The next piece on that is we have the PPOs that start to grow. Wall Street mentality comes in and they start buying up these smaller systems and aggregating them, right? And as they buy up these systems, now the hospitals are not a partner in that transaction. They are a provider that has to say yes because they represent such a large portion of their business. The PPO becomes dominant in that transaction. And again, I go philosophical a lot here. If you want to see a good square deal between multiple parties, see one where all parties are equal in terms of what they're bringing to the table. If you want to see a really one-sided deal, a very outsized proportion and control of the situation. You'll end up with one-sided contracts, one-sided agreements, right? This is not unique to healthcare space. This is humanity. So PPOs grow, and that's what most of the American marketplace is inside of right now. PPOs, the big ones are going to be your, you've heard them all. I don't want to use brand names here, but you know the big PPOs. You see that little symbol on a card and you think that that's the insurance. That's just the network that you're buying into. The PPOs have grown to be nationwide at this point and all-encompassing. So as the PPO market has evolved, hospitals have said, well, if I'm only going to be a subject in this negotiation, I'm going to join them all. And they've kind of lost their value. It's more of an indemnity plan with an additional fee on top of it in a lot of cases. In some cases, there's still a lot of value for PPO type networks. If the hospitals would not take any and go directly back to an indemnity type program and get rid of their elevated charge masters that was back from the indemnity part of our entire market, then we'd have a better market. We have to deal with the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. So that's how we got to a large portion, probably 90% of where our current market sits, depending on who you ask, is inside of the 80 to 90 PPO market. You've got a little bit of indemnity left, you've got a little bit of HMOs, and you've got a couple of other pieces that are shaking out there that are moderately new. We're going to talk about in the next video, and that is the RBP style of paying and pricing for care. Something kind of incredible, something kind of noisy, something kind of bumpy, something kind of new. But that's for the next video. That's for video 4, and we'll cover a couple of other pieces that are shaking out that will really affect our business. Now, the question that we asked earlier, is it better to live in a society where you can't afford to treat your child or the treatment for that child doesn't exist? It's an uncomfortable question, right? I'm a father myself. When you think through that question, there's a certain frame that if you utilize it, it really helps clarify the situation. And that is snapshots in time. If we're only looking at the now, if we're only looking at the extremely short term, then I think people can be forgiven for saying that I want to live in a society in which that treatment does not exist. That's not how societies work, right? We don't live in a society where it's only now and it's never tomorrow. Time moves forward. So if you think of time as moving forward and you look at the situation of that question, you have to see in this complex adaptive system, what happens to that state-of-the-art cure? That state-of-the-art cure becomes mundane, becomes the everyday, it becomes pedestrian over time. It disperses itself across the entire planet from our shores, and it becomes something that increases life expectancy around the world. So what we have to do, what we have to fight against is the immaturity of the now. What we have to fight for is the future of care, treatments, and cures. Now that's how I shake down on that. That's how I look at that question. It's one that I've tried to boil down. If I'm wrong here, I am more than open to a conversation. But I think it's the best way to look at our system and the best way to move forward as a society that cares about its future. My name's still Tom Stein Jr. We are American Trust Administrators. Let us know how we can help with RFPs, marketing services. Email will be somewhere around here. Looking forward to help. We'll see you in the next video.